Archaeologists made a shocking discovery at Cleopatra's tomb that could change history as we know it. After months of excavating, they uncovered a mysterious tomb that had been hidden away for centuries. It was a small golden box with strange markings on it. What could it contain? The archaeologists were filled with anticipation as they opened the box, but what they found inside was far more terrifying than they could have imagined. Could this discovery rewrite the history books? Let's find out. Recently, scientists have been conducting excavations at an ancient Egyptian temple located close to Alexandria. During these excavations, they discovered something that is both shocking and unusual. During their exploration of a burial pit that had just recently been uncovered, they came upon a mummy that was almost 2,000 years old and had a tomb made of gold. This is not to claim that the mummy suddenly came to life and started impressing them with its abilities of oratory persuasion after this point in time. It indicates that the mummy had a real golden tongue, which was a reproduction constructed from properly formed and shining golden foil. An international group of archaeologists from the Dominican Republic and Egypt, led by the renowned archaeologist Kathleen Martinez, worked together to make this spectacular find. The excavations were carried out at a site known as Taposiris Magna. Taposiris Magna was a small ancient community that was founded in 280 BC by Ptolemy II. Ptolemy II was one of the Ptolemaic descendants of Alexander the Great, who ruled Egypt as a Hellenistic state for nearly 300 years after Alexander the Great's conquest of Egypt in the 4th century BC. The temple at Taposiris Magna that housed the mummies was dedicated to Osiris, the ancient Egyptian lord of the underworld. Osiris was revered by Greek officials in Egypt who respected the country's long-standing customs. The reason why the mummy was given a golden tongue is a mystery that cannot be answered. The individuals who found it believe that Osiris was able to speak vocally with the dead person via the tongue that was linked to their body in order for them to go on to the afterlife. This, however, is purely theoretical since there are no written documents that can identify the guy in question or provide evidence that he would have had anything to say that an ancient Egyptian deity would have been interested in hearing. A breathtaking assortment of artifacts from the city of Alexandria. The mummy with the golden tongue was a very rare find, but it is only one of the intriguing treasures that have been uncovered in the 16 new burial holes that were just recently discovered by Kathleen Martinez and her Dominican Egyptian team. One of the most extraordinary discoveries was a female mummy that had been wrapped in a coffin-length death mask covering her whole body. In addition, the researchers discovered the skeletal remains of 2 other mummies that had been entombed, one of which was coated in plaster layers that were painted with golden depictions of Osiris. Scrolls that were only partially intact were discovered close to these mummies, and the archaeologists have now undertaken the hard and time-consuming task of deciphering the scrolls in order to discover any hidden information that they may contain. In addition, a number of sculptures that had been well maintained were found, and it is thought that these statues represent some of the significant persons who were buried in the Taposiris Magna temple. Other priceless artifacts were unearthed with the mummies in the burial holes. These include 8 marble masks and 8 golden flakes that were once a part of a golden wreath. It is not feasible to assign a specific year to these artifacts while trying to determine their age. However, it is very certain that they were interred at some point during the period of Greek control, which extended from 305 BC to 30 BC and lasted for the whole of that time period. The life story of Kathleen Martinez, as told in the book, In Search of Cleopatra. Kathleen Martinez began her career as an archaeologist in 2002, not long after she received her master's degree in archaeology. Prior to that, she had been educated as a lawyer and continues to do so on a part-time basis. In addition, she began her investigations in Egypt, somewhere inside. It is well known that Cleopatra and Mark Antony felt an affinity to these figures from Egyptian mythology. Martinez was certain that if she just located the appropriate temple, she would find these mummies. During Martinez's first trip to Egypt, she was successful in getting an appointment with the well-known Egyptologist Dr. Zahi Hawass, who serves as Egypt's Minister of Antiquities. Martinez was there to study the country's ancient artifacts. Martinez, despite all of the difficulties stacked against him, was able to get a permit that would allow him to tour multiple temples for a period of 2 months, even though such access is often denied to independent researchers. Martinez made a finding that was going to alter the course of her life, despite the fact that she only had a little bit of time to search. During an interview in 2016, she spoke with the news agency. She said that 2 months is nothing in the field of archaeology, but I accepted what they provided me. And on the final day of those 2 months, I made a major discovery that revolutionized the architecture of Egyptian temples. I discovered 2 rooms in the Temple of Taposiris Magna that had been concealed from view in the past, and I believe that one of these chambers contains Mark Antony and Cleopatra's tomb. After he had returned to the Dominican Republic, Martinez was successful in persuading administrators at the University of Santo Domingo to fund more archaeological investigations at Taposiris Magna. In 2005, Martinez and her team made history by being the first group of Latin American archaeologists to be granted permission to conduct excavations on Egyptian land. Martinez is the leader of the team. The location of Cleopatra's burial site has not yet been located, thus it is unknown if Martinez will ever uncover it. There is no concrete evidence that points to her being buried in the temple at Taposiris Magna. Nonetheless, experts do not rule out the idea that she and Mark Antony may be buried there. Martinez's idea is viewed with extreme skepticism by a large number of archaeologists and Egyptologists, including Dr. Hawass. Nevertheless, the magnitude of Martinez's achievements throughout the almost 2 decades that she has devoted to investigating the Taposiris Magna site is indisputable and cannot be disputed. Since they started their digs in 2005, she and her crew have found hundreds of artifacts, some of which include a bust of Cleopatra, as well as various antique coins from her time period that feature her picture. They also uncovered evidence that demonstrated the foundation of the temple had been built during the reign of Ptolemy IV, who ruled Egypt from 221 BC to 204 BC. Ptolemy IV controlled Egypt from 221 BC to 204 BC. That's all for this video. Like it and share it with your friends. Also, comment down below what you all think about it. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't yet and click the bell icon so you are getting notifications of all our latest videos. Thanks for watching. Discoveries are made in different places and then shown to the public, but there are some discoveries that scientists have only kept to themselves. What is it? Whether it is existing or is horrifying. A few recent discoveries that have been around Cleopatra's tomb have shocked scientists, but they have kept it to themselves. What is it? These might shock you, people. So, existed to know what are these? Let us find out. Even if someone had made an effort, there is no way that the timing could have made it work out any better. Egyptologists are now organizing festivities in honor of the 100-year anniversary of the discovery of Tutankhamun's tomb. This year marks the first year that the tomb was discovered. During the same time period, they stumbled upon a new archaeological find that seems to have been produced in Egypt and has the potential to be of significant importance. Archaeologists have uncovered a passageway that goes to an unidentified location under the Taposiris Magna Temple, which is located to the west of the ancient city of Alexandria. As a result of their findings, they have come to the conclusion that this tunnel may end up leading to the burial site of Queen Cleopatra, and the evidence seems to back up this hypothesis. The discovery of proof that this is truly the case still has to be done, but such a finding would be considered a huge find since it would have the potential to rewrite what we know about Egypt's most renowned queen. To put it another way, finding anything like that would be quite an accomplishment. Plutarch, who wrote a biography of Cleopatra's husband, the Roman general Mark Antony, and who is responsible for the lengthiest and most detailed account of the last days of Cleopatra's reign, claims that Antony and Cleopatra were buried inside Cleopatra's mausoleum. Plutarch is responsible for the lengthiest and most detailed account of the last days of Cleopatra. Plutarch is the author of the narrative of the previous days of Cleopatra's reign that is known to be the most lengthy and comprehensive. Mark Antony, Cleopatra's husband, was also a topic of Plutarch's work and the subject of another biography that Plutarch wrote and published. According to Plutarch, The day when Augustus and his Roman army entered Egypt and took Alexandria was the same day that Antony fell on his sword, died away in Cleopatra's arms, and was thereafter buried in the tomb. Augustus and his Roman army invaded Egypt on the same day. On the same day that everything else took place, something also took place. Cleopatra re-entered her tomb after an interval of 2 weeks in order to carry out ceremonial acts there, such as presenting offerings and pouring libations. It is unclear precisely what she did when she was in the tomb. Nonetheless, it is known that she carried out an action that cannot be completely characterized in any way. A popular misconception is Cleopatra's son Ptolemy, the 15th Caesar, commonly known as Khazarian, Little Caesar. Khazarian was also referred to as Little Caesar at one point. After their deaths, it is possible that both of the young men were laid to rest in the same cemetery as their friend. In the extremely remote possibility that the tomb of Cleopatra has not already been destroyed by the waves of the Mediterranean along with the majority of the Hellenistic city of Alexandria, and in the event that it is unearthed, would be a very significant find. A finding that has the potential to significantly alter the way things have transpired up to this point in time, even though the tombs of many famous historical monarchs are still standing today. For example, the mausoleum of Augustus in Rome, who was Antony and Cleopatra's bitter opponent. The contents of the tombs have frequently been stolen or destroyed over the course of many centuries. This is the case despite the fact that the tombs of many famous historical monarchs are still standing today. This is the case regardless of the fact that many notable historical kings' graves remain preserved in their original locations today. Near Vergina, in the late 1970s, a tomb that archaeologists believe to be that of Philip II of Macedon, king of Macedonia at the time, who is often considered to be Alexander the Great's father, was discovered. Philip II is known for being Alexander the Great's father. This is a significant change from the standard, which has been set in the past. The tomb's discovery in its entirety has made it possible for decades' worth of research to had all of its original contents. Egyptologists, classicists, ancient historians, and archaeologists would all be able to learn a significant amount of fresh knowledge from the material included in this book. The majority of what we know about Cleopatra and her reign comes from literary manuscripts that were written in ancient Greek and Roman languages. These documents were discovered in Egypt in the 19th and 20th centuries. These texts were produced quite some time after the Egyptian queen died away, and the overarching sentiment that can be gleaned from them regarding her is one of dislike. We do not have a lot of material that reflects the perspective of the Egyptians on Cleopatra. However, the information that we do have, such as honorific reliefs on the temples that she constructed and votives donated by her people, provides us with a complete different understanding of who she was. The moral and ethical problems that arise from reburying Cleopatra once her bones have been unearthed. The last resting site of any other Ptolemaic king has not been discovered to this day, since it has not been feasible to do so. It has been reported that they were all located in the palace section of Alexandria, and it is thought that they have all been flooded along with the rest of the city in that sector of the city, since there is where the palace region is located. The architectural and material contents of the tomb alone would be sufficient to keep historians busy for decades, and they would divulge a huge amount of knowledge about the Ptolemaic royal worship, as well as the melding of Macedonian and Egyptian culture. But if Cleopatra's bones were also found there, they may tell us a great deal more, such as the reason for her death and her physical appearance, and even provide an answer to the difficult question of whether or not she was of African or European descent. If Cleopatra's bones were found there, they may tell us these things and more. If the remains of Cleopatra were discovered in that location, the information that they provide may be very helpful. Should we continue to have an open mind about the possibility of finding Cleopatra's remains, and, if we do, conduct an examination of them? From the pharaoh Tutankhamun to the common ancient Egyptians, whose mummies have been unearthed over the course of the ages, there is a long history of incompetent administration and poor care of the dead that can be traced back to ancient Egypt. This includes both the mummies of the pharaoh Tutankhamun and the mummies of the common ancient Egyptians. This contains any and all mummies that have been discovered throughout the course of human history. Even though the days of Victorian dinner parties that featured the unwrapping of mummies as a form of entertainment are, thank God, a thing of the past, concerns over the appropriate preservation of our ancestors are being addressed more and more frequently by individuals who work in the heritage area. Even if the finding of Cleopatra's tomb would be of incalculable benefit to Egyptologists and other academics, would it be acceptable to deny the Queen the opportunity for the same amount of peace and seclusion in death as she was denied during her life? In other words, would it be acceptable to deny the Queen the opportunity for the same amount of peace and seclusion in death as she was denied during her life? That's all, people. Hope you liked the video. Let us know in the comment box what you all think about it. Like it and share it with your friends to spread the information.
Terrifying discovery in Cleopatra's tomb no one was supposed to see. Antony was brought to Cleopatra after he was fatally injured. Even though the monarch was inconsolable, Antony had pleaded with the queen to reconcile with Octavian before his death. But Octavian was not interested in making any bargains. Instead of giving up and becoming a prize parade to Rome, Cleopatra took her own life. Although her two handmaidens died at the same time, implying she was poisoned in some other way, legend has it that she did this by alluring a snake to bite her. Though Cleopatra was the last pharaoh of Egypt, making an unsuccessful attempt to use her charisma to stave off the Roman invasion, she is still a great figure in Egypt. But where is her body? But have scientists found anything yet? It seems like they have. Interested in discovering more. Here at A Secret World, we will talk about all the ancient history and tell all the truths which are yet unsaid. So without wasting time, let's get into Cleopatra's tomb. Cleopatra's undiscovered tomb is akin to the Holy Grail for Egyptologists in search of ancient Egyptian royalty. A once-in-a-century event, according to experts. Such a discovery would change history. One archaeologist even speculated that she might have done so. Archaeologist Kathleen Martinez from the University of Santo Domingo has discovered what she thinks is the passage to Cleopatra's tomb in northern Egypt. After nearly 2 decades of looking, a 4,281-foot-long tunnel was discovered 43 feet below the surface. Martinez told CNN that the dig uncovered a large religious complex, including 3 sanctuaries, a sacred lake, and more than 1,500 artifacts, including busts, statues, golden pieces, and a large collection of coins depicting Alexander the Great, Queen Cleopatra, and the Ptolemies. Keep on watching if you want to find out what happens next. To know fully about Cleopatra, we need to dig into who Cleopatra is. Approximately between the years 51 BC and 30 BC, Cleopatra served as the monarch for ancient Egypt. Mark Antony, her Roman general's spouse, after suffering a devastating defeat. So did Cleopatra. Legend has it that she let a snake bite her, but historians think less spectacular poisoning accomplished the trick. Numerous books, movies, and mystery were all inspired by famous deaths. It is unknown where Cleopatra and her husband, Mark Antony, are buried, even now, over 2,000 years after their deaths. According to some experts, Cleopatra is misunderstood. Martinez told CNN that she thinks the Egyptian queen is misunderstood and that she admires Cleopatra as a student, linguist, mother, and philosopher. You can't mistake my tenacity for obsession. As a historical figure, I find Cleopatra to be quite inspiring. The Romans intentionally distorted her image through propaganda, Martinez remarked. It was also noted that she was an educated woman, arguably the first one to study formally at the museum in Alexandria, the hub of civilization in her time. Clues point to a possible gravesite of hers. Well, in 2005, Martinez first set out to discover where Cleopatra's tomb had been hidden. Multiple hints pointed her towards the Temple of Osiris in Taposiris Magna, an area of ancient ruins on Egypt's northern coast near the Mediterranean Sea, as a possible location for Cleopatra's grave. The name gives us our first hint. Well, did you know, in her day, Cleopatra was regarded to be the human incarnation of the goddess Isis, and her husband, Mark Antony, the god Osiris, Isis's husband. According to CNN, Martinez claims that Cleopatra buried her husband in the temple, as is suggested by a legend. There is no other area, construction, or the temple that combines so many conditions as the Temple of Taposiris Magna. She stated. The tunnels beneath the ocean floor and the fact that her temple was built in her honor have both been uncovered thanks to archaeological diggings. It can be sensed as an almost unprecedented discovery, Jane Dricott, a lecturer in classics at the University of Glasgow, said on The Conversation this week. If the mausoleum of Cleopatra is not already vanished beneath the waves of the Mediterranean, along with most of the Hellenistic city of Alexandria, and is one day found, it would be an almost unprecedented archaeological discovery. The scientific potential of an unbroken tomb is immense. Although many mausoleums of great historical rulers are still standing, such as the Augustus, Antony and Cleopatra's mortal opponent in Rome, Dricott notices that their contents were frequently robbed and lost centuries ago. Egyptologists, classicists, ancient historians, and archaeologists would learn a vast quantity of fresh information from its contents. It is also possible that mythology can end forever. Underwater excavations are up next for Martinez and her crew. While Martinez cautions that it's too early to know where these tunnels lead, she remains hopeful. It will be the most momentous finding of the century, she told CNN, if they in fact do find Cleopatra. Assume for a moment that the tomb has not been swept away by the currents of the Mediterranean. If so, it might be the most significant discovery in decades, as in the Hellenistic metropolis of Alexandria. This week's issue of the Economic Times agreed. Find of the tomb would affect the history of the famous Cleopatra forever. That's all for the video today. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.
Where, oh where is she? Who, you ask? Cleopatra is whom I'm talking about. We still haven't found where Antony and Cleopatra are buried. And what's more, the truth of the story of her death and what followed is still the subject of intense debate. So, where is Cleopatra's tomb? And are we really close to finding it? Stick to the end to know the real reason why they won't find Cleopatra. On one side, we can very confidently say that she's everywhere, of course. Her name is immortalized on things like slot machines, games, places to get clothes cleaned, and even a project to watch pollution in the Mediterranean. She's also on an asteroid called 216 Cleopatra. They say her fancy baths and lavish lifestyle inspired a kind of perfume. But today, instead of being a queen, she's connected to the most popular cigarettes in the Middle East. A critic named Harold Bloom once said she was the first famous person in the world. If history is like a play, she played many roles. A royal daughter, a royal mom, and a royal sister in a family that's a bit like The Sopranos. People have written lots of things about her, including 5 ballets, 45 operas, and 77 plays from 1540 to 1905. She has been in at least 7 movies, and there's a new one coming with Angelina Jolie. Now here's the interesting part. Yet if she is everywhere, Cleopatra is a bit mysterious. A famous biographer named Michael Grant said she's hidden in a cloud of made-up stories and harsh criticism that has been around since she was alive. Even though people talk about how she could charm people, we don't really know what her face looked like. The pictures we have are from old coins, and they don't make her look good. We will come back to that later. The people who wrote about her in ancient times didn't talk about her beauty, but how she could make people really interested when they talked to her. She made 2 important Roman guys, Julius Caesar, who had a son with her, and Mark Antony, who was her lover for a long time and had 3 kids with her, really like her. But it wasn't just her looks. It was how she talked and the kind of person she was that made people like her. Her voice was nice, and she was good at talking with people. Now, people have been trying to figure out where Cleopatra's tomb is ever since they last saw her in her special place, wearing a crown and fancy clothes, lying on a golden bed as described by Plutarch. But one big reason we haven't found Cleopatra's tomb, and probably why we will never find the tomb, is because there isn't solid proof telling us exactly where it is. The old historians like Plutarch wrote about her tomb, but their writings don't give us enough clear and detailed information that modern researchers can use to find it. So, archaeologists have to guess and try to figure things out by looking at different clues from different places, hoping that one day they'll get lucky and discover the tomb that's been hiding all this time. Well, before we even get deeper into this, let's first get to know how Cleopatra even got there. On August 12, 30 BC, Cleopatra was in a tough spot. She was losing to the Roman army led by Octavian, who would later become Emperor Augustus. Her husband, Antony, had just died, thinking she was already gone. In Alexandria, with the Romans closing in, the 39-year-old Cleopatra locked herself in her room with 2 female helpers. According to the famous story that many people know, she ended her own life using snake poison, which was seen as a symbol of being like a god. It was a fitting end for Egypt's last queen. Cleopatra had wished to be buried next to her beloved Antony. Her death marked the end of her nearly 30-year rule. It also meant the end of the Macedonian dynasty, started by Ptolemy and the last queen of Egypt. But it was also the beginning of the famous story of Antony and Cleopatra. Today, one of the most intriguing mysteries of this story is that we still haven't found the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra. Contemporary accounts from the time tell us of vast and elaborate tombs commissioned by Cleopatra and completed in 30 BC. This tomb was meant for her and marked all the monuments in Luxor. It's not a big surprise though, because things like earthquakes, big waves, rising seas, sinking lands, fights, and the reuse of building stones have wiped out the old part of Alexandria where Cleopatra and her family lived for 300 years. Now, most of the ancient glory of Alexandria is about 20 feet underwater, making most people think her tomb is lost because it might have sunk underwater with her palace in Alexandria a long time ago. But some still search for it today, hoping to finally find the tomb of Cleopatra and maybe even Antony, her beloved. But really, will they find it? But there is one theory that proves them wrong. It suggests that there's a strong possibility that Cleopatra doesn't have a traditional tomb, because the Romans, after her death, might have chosen to cremate her remains instead of interring them. The Romans had different funeral customs, and cremation was a common practice among them. This explains the absence of a known tomb dedicated to Cleopatra. Lately, they're looking in the desert outside Alexandria at a temple. They wonder if Cleopatra, who was smart and planned things carefully, might have made a special tomb for herself in a more important and sacred place than downtown Alexandria. Now, all these instances have kept people wondering, including myself, will we ever find Cleopatra's tomb? The same adds to the fact that Cleopatra has outsmarted everyone. Cleopatra's fascinating mythology has captured the imagination of everyone from Shakespeare to Hollywood, as well as generations of historians. Now, there's a lawyer turned archaeologist named Kathleen Martinez, who has spent almost 20 years of her life trying to solve one of the biggest mysteries of all: where is Cleopatra's tomb? But how is it possible that the most famous woman of the ancient world remains missing today? Because Cleopatra outsmarted everyone, Martinez says. Kathleen Martinez and her team have been digging for 14 years. They found some exciting things related to Cleopatra at a place called Taposiris Magna, which is an old temple near Alexandria in Egypt. There's a chance that Cleopatra might be buried there. But if Martinez does find her, that's just the beginning. She says that the ancient Egyptians tell us about themselves through their tombs. So, if she finds Cleopatra's tomb, it could reveal a lot of things we didn't know about her. Discovering the tomb is just the start of a big project. They'll have to carefully document everything in the tomb, dig it up carefully, fix any damaged stuff, move things safely, and figure out the history behind all the things they find. And all these efforts have not gone in vain. Martinez and her team made an amazing discovery. They found a tunnel that's incredibly long, about 1,305 meters, which is 4,281 feet in total. What's even more impressive is that it's buried quite deep underground, about 13 meters or 43 feet. Experts say this tunnel is like an engineering miracle because it's so well designed. The excavation revealed a huge religious center with 3 sanctuaries, a sacred lake, more than 1,500 objects, busts, statues, golden pieces, a huge collection of coins portraying Alexander the Great, Queen Cleopatra, and the Ptolemies, Martinez told CNN. They've been digging and found out that the temple was dedicated to a goddess named Isis. Kathleen Martinez thinks this is a clue that Cleopatra's tomb might be nearby. They also found some tunnels that go under the sea. Now, she and her team are starting a new part of their search, underwater digging. They don't know where these tunnels go yet, but she's hopeful. Martinez believes that if these tunnels lead to Cleopatra's tomb, it would be the most important discovery of this century. Egypt's top archaeologist, Zahi Hawass, wanted to convince people that they were very close to finding the lost tomb of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. He showed 22 coins, 10 mummies, and a piece of a mask with a special chin during a visit to a 2,000-year-old temple dedicated to the god Osiris. He believes this place near the Mediterranean Sea might have the tomb of these famous lovers, which has been a mystery for a long time. Hawass often makes big announcements about ancient Egypt to get people interested. However, some experts in Egyptology from other places have not always agreed with his exciting claims and think we should be careful. Wearing his famous hat that's like Indiana Jones, Hawass took reporters through the Toposiris Magnet Temple, which is about 30 miles, 50 kilometers away from Alexandria, the old capital by the sea. He showed them all the things that his team had found during 3 years of digging, including a piece of a mask with a special chin. If you look at the face of Mark Antony, many believed he had this cleft on his chin, and that's why I thought this could be Mark Antony, said Hawass. But he admitted they are not sure 100%, and joked that the mask could depict Richard Burton, the actor who played Mark Antony in the 1963 movie Cleopatra, also starring Elizabeth Taylor. For Zahi Hawass, the most important part of the recent findings was the discovery of tombs that are from the same time as the temple. These tombs are all around the temple and even contain 10 mummies of important people. Hawass said, "Finding the cemetery this week really made me believe that someone important is buried in this temple." He explained that in ancient times, important people were always buried next to pyramids, so it's unusual for someone important to be buried outside a temple. Because of this discovery, Hawass used special radar to look under the ground around the temple. This radar showed 3 possible places where there might be underground burial chambers, about 40 feet or 12 meters below the surface. But have they really given a thought that there's also the possibility that Cleopatra's tomb might have been found already, but people didn't realize its importance back then? Egypt has many tombs and burial sites, and sometimes Cleopatra's tomb could have been one of them. But if there weren't clear signs or special things to show it was hers, it might have been missed or not recognized for what it truly was. Another reason Cleopatra's tomb has eluded us is that ancient Egypt was a land of many tombs and monuments. Over thousands of years, these sites have been buried, looted, or repurposed, making it tough for archaeologists to find undisturbed tombs. It's like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Well, we appreciate all the efforts, but as we've seen, the search for this ancient treasure has been ongoing for years, and while many exciting discoveries have been made, the elusive tomb of Cleopatra and Mark Antony remains hidden. But here's the intriguing question to ponder. Could the tomb of these legendary lovers ever truly be found, or will it forever remain a mystery shrouded in history and the sands of time? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section, and be sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any updates on this captivating archaeological quest. Who knows, the next revelation might just bring us one step closer to unraveling the secrets of Cleopatra's final resting place. Until then, keep exploring the wonders of our world and stay curious.